Warschau, 1795.
The air was heavy with a suffocating stillness, the deathly hush of a world left stagnant in the wake of a storm. Inside the magnificent yet terrifyingly cavernous royal castle, a single long table draped in snow-white linen stood as a monument to isolation. Stanislav August sat alone before his silver service, while outside, the once mighty Polish kingdom was being systematically erased, partitioned like a confection by three rapacious neighbors. Tonight, by the rhythmic flicker of the hearth, let us journey through the true odyssey of his life with a tale that requires no effort to remember, only to be felt. He was the last sovereign of Poland and one of the most refined polymaths in all of Europe. History often mocks his perceived frailty before brute force and scorns his tangled liaison with Catherine the Great. Yet few have ever peered beneath the exquisite velvet to see the ruin within his heart, a landscape tormented by duty and the agonizing weight of powerlessness. This is a chronicle of elegance defying barbarism, of ideals shattered against reality, and of a man guarding his dignity within the gilded cage of an era. The trajectory of Stanislav August's fate was irrevocably struck on a winter night in St. Petersburg. He was then young, handsome, and possessed of a quintessential Warsaw poise laced with Gallic grace. Having arrived at the Russian court as a diplomatic envoy, he encountered the Grand Duchess Sophia, the future Catherine the Great, who was then merely a sequestered princess. In the moon-drenched gardens of the Winter Palace, they exchanged a litany of whispers concerning literature, art, and the intoxicating nature of power. The young Polish nobleman mistook this for a mere romantic tryst, never dreaming that these silken threads of affection would one day become the garrote that strangled his motherland. When Catherine seized the throne with an iron fist, she required a compliant neighbor to sentry Russia's western portals. Thus, under the escort of Russian bayonets, Stanislav was thrust beneath the precarious weight of the Polish crown. On his coronation day, though the Warsaw sun shone brilliantly, he could feel that every step across the marble floors echoed with the leaden chill of the Northern Empire. He harbored a profound love for Poland, yearning to mold it into an enlightened sanctuary akin to England or France, yet the very pillars of his throne were gripped firmly in the hands of his former lover. Ruling a nation perpetually on the verge of dismemberment, Stanislav chose the gentlest yet most solitary path of redemption, art and enlightenment. He believed that if the body of Poland was destined for suffering, her soul must achieve immortality through the radiance of civilization. He established academies and patronized a legion of painters, poets and architects, meticulously sculpting Warsaw into the Paris of the North. Within the dreamlike palace on the Isle at Lazienki Park, he personally ordained the placement of every marble deity. He made a habit of wandering the long galleries at midnight, his solitary candle illuminating the gods of Greece and Rome, as if only before these immutable stones could he momentarily forget the predatory shadows looming outside his court. He promulgated the Constitution of May 3, the first written supreme law in Europe, attempting to breathe new life into an ancient nation through systemic renewal. Yet, this beacon of reason stung the eyes of the surrounding hunters and provoked Catherine, now the empress of all the Russias. To her, a resurgent Poland was an impermissible hallucination, and any effort by Stanislav appeared pathetically scholarly and diminutive when measured against the crushing weight of absolute military might. As the grim tidings of the first and second partitions arrived, Stanislav's court began to resemble a magnificent funeral parlor. He was coerced into signing treaties of secession, each stroke of his pen felt like a surgical excision of his
own flesh.
Former admirers transformed into virulent detractors. The populace branded him a Russian lackey, while Russia viewed him as a treacherous pawn. The nadir of this cruelty arrived with his final gathering, the last of his famous Thursday dinners. The scholars who once debated Rousseau and Voltaire with him now sat in hollow silence, the only sound the delicate clink of crystal and the distant thunder of cannon fire. He maintained an impeccable decorum, personally pouring wine for his guests and discussing the interplay of light in Raphael's canvases, as if aesthetic beauty could somehow stave off the collapse of reality. This morbid elegance was, in truth, a sovereign's final stand for the independence of his soul after the loss of his soil. As the dinner concluded, he watched the departing silhouettes and realized this was not merely the end of a banquet, but a dirge for over 2 centuries of Polish sovereignty. That night, he stood for a long time by the lake in Lazienki Park, watching the moon shatter upon the dark water, feeling the glacial chill of a man utterly forsaken by his ERIN 1795. Stanislav August formally abdicated and was escorted back to St. Petersburg to begin the final movement of his life, the years of house arrest. It was a bitter irony that his jailer was none other than his former lover and ultimate conqueror, Catherine. Though permitted to keep a private collection and a few attendants, he knew well that every ornate corner of the marble palace concealed a spying eye. Each morning, he continued to fastidiously groom his beard and don his traditional Polish robes, pacing slowly through the silent rooms. He took to writing voluminous letters to Catherine, no longer concerning the mechanics of power, but the repatriation of Polish art and the preservation of ancient codices ravaged by war. He set up a telescope by his window, not to chart the heavens, but to scan the western horizon, imagining if the church bells of Warsaw still tolled in the dawn. He transmuted the solitude of his confinement into a profoundly intellectual and restrained sorrow, a nocturne that seemed destined never to reach its final bard. On a morning in 1798, before the St. Petersburg ice had begun to thaw, Stanislav August passed away peacefully in his sleep. His departure, much like the disappearance of Poland itself, caused barely a ripple in the world's consciousness. Catherine the Great had already predeceased him. Thus, the former lovers and subsequent enemies finally reached a ultimate, silent concord within the dominion of death. History often brands his life with the stamp of tragedy and failure. Yet the cultural embers he spent a lifetime gathering and guarding became the impenetrable armor of the Polish spirit during the 123 years of its erasure from the map. Even today, those who wander through lazy Yankee Park can still feel the lingering warmth of the king, an eternal aesthetic force that refused to bow to violence. He lost the soil, but through art, he ensured that the word Poland would forever maintain an exquisite and noble resonance within the lexicon of world civilization. The saga of Stanislav August Poniatowski thus concludes beneath the frigid headstones of St. Petersburg. He was never a master of absolute power, he was merely a mortal desperately sheltering the flickering lamp of civilization where the darkness converged. He teaches us that even in a losing game, the preservation of elegance and kindness is in itself a supreme victory. Just as he did during those nights of lost liberty, keeping vigil over a dying candle, tracing the outlines of a future upon the ruins of his homeland with the tip of his pen. Perhaps you, too, are currently navigating the crushing weight of irresistible pressure or the hollow ache of solitude. But pray, believe that within every life exists a utopia that cannot be dismantled. It is found not in territories or hierarchies, but in every resolute breath and your unyielding pursuit of beauty. Tonight's story has ended, the Polish snows have settled, and the world outside has surrendered to silence. May the refinement and serenity of Stanislav August become the softest feather within your dreams, carrying you into an abiding night devoid of strife, filled only with art and peace.
Good night, and may sweet dreams attend you.